So today we're going to talk about neuroeconomics. It's this incredible field that's all about what's really happening inside your brain when you make a choice. Any choice, really. And let me tell you, it's a process that is way stranger and honestly way more fascinating than you probably think.
Just think about the last choice you made. I don't know, maybe it was what to have for breakfast, coffee or tea. It feels super simple, doesn't it? You pick one. But have you ever stopped to wonder what actually happened inside your head in that tiny split second?
Well, for a really long time, traditional economics it was perfectly happy to just ignore that question entirely. The whole mental process, the back and forth, the feeling, the uncertainty, it was all just treated like this complete mystery, a total black box that we couldn't and maybe even shouldn't try to look inside.
All right, so let's really get into this whole black box problem. Because to get why neuroeconomics is such a game changer, you've got to first understand how traditional economics used to see the mind. And basically, they saw it as a vending machine.
Yeah, the standard approach was this thing called an as-if model. So if you choose coffee over tea, the model just says it's as if you have a solid, rational preference for coffee. It doesn't care at all about the how or the why. All that matters is the final action. Your choice just reveals your preference. That's it.
And that brings us right back to that vending machine analogy. It's pretty simple, right? We know the input, your preferences, your money, and we see the output, let's say a can of Coke. But all that stuff happening on the inside, the whirring, the clanking, the actual mechanism that makes the choice, traditional economics just shrugged and said, it's a mystery. But what if we could actually crack open that vending machine? Well, that is exactly what neuroeconomics is all about. It's this whole new science of choice that actually dares to look inside that black box.
One of the pioneers in this field, a guy named David Leibson, he defines it as the study of the biological microfoundations of economic cognition. Okay, I know that sounds super complicated, like a real mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually incredibly powerful and pretty direct.
So let's just break that down. Biological microfoundations, that's just a fancy way of saying the literal physical stuff in your body. We're talking brain systems, neurons, even your genes and neurotransmitters like dopamine. Then you have economic cognition. That's all the mental stuff that economists are interested in. How we form our preferences, what role our emotions play, how we learn, and of course, how we actually decide things. So neuroeconomics is all about connecting our physical brain to our economic choices.
Okay, so what do we find once we got inside that box? Well, the first big surprise is that making a decision, it's not some clean, logical calculation. Nope, it's actually really messy.
See, instead of some instant A plus B equals C calculation, scientists now see that our decisions are a dynamic process. They actually unfold over time. And here's the kicker. This whole process is constantly being influenced by what they call noise, just tiny, random fluctuations in our neural signals. It means our thinking is literally a little bit fuzzy.
A great way to picture this is something called the Drift Diffusion Model. Just think of it like a race. So you're faced with that choice again, coffee or tea. Your brain starts gathering evidence for each one, but that random neural noise we just talked about, it gets in the way, making the process unpredictable. Once the evidence for one of those options finally hits a certain threshold, boom, a choice is made. And this is a huge insight, right? It totally explains why you can be super decisive one moment and then hesitate on that exact same simple choice the very next day.
There's another model, the Softmax function, that really drives this point home. It shows that our choices are probabilistic, not deterministic. What does that mean? Well, if you prefer coffee just a little bit more than tea, old school economics would say you will always choose coffee, every single time. But neuroeconomics proves what we all kind of know from our own lives. Because of all that internal noise, you're just more likely to pick coffee. There's always a chance you'll go for the tea instead.
So, we've established our decision-making is noisy. It's dynamic. But why? Why is it so noisy? Well, this might be the biggest discovery to come out of that black box. It turns out our brain isn't one single unified system. It's more like a committee of rivals, all constantly battling it out for control of your choices.
Now, we can simplify this down to two main systems. First, you've got the gut system. This is the fast one, it's automatic, and it lives for right-now gratification, super short-sighted. And then you've got the mind system. This one's slow, it's conscious, and it can actually think about long-term consequences. This is the part of you that makes plans for the future.
And what's so cool is just how universal this idea is. I mean, look at this. All these different theories from psychology and economics. You've got System 1 versus System 2, the planner versus the doer. My personal favorite are inner Homer Simpson versus our inner Spock. They're all describing the exact same battle happening inside our heads.
So how do scientists actually do this? How do they peek inside the box and see this battle happening in real time? And maybe more importantly, what has it taught us about who we are?
Okay, so one of the main tools is the fMRI. It basically takes pictures of your brain while it's working. See, when a part of your brain gets more active, it needs more oxygen-rich blood. An fMRI machine can detect that blood flow. This lets scientists literally see which areas, like your gut system or your mind system, are lighting up when you're trying to decide whether to spend your money or save it.
And then there's this other incredible tool called TMS. It uses a magnetic field to safely and temporarily turn off a tiny part of the brain. Think of it like flipping a circuit breaker in your house. And this is so important because it lets scientists figure out cause and effect. They can ask, hey, if we briefly quiet down the mind system, does the gut system suddenly take the wheel and start making all the choices?
And the insights we're getting from these tools are just astounding. For example, there was this landmark study that looked at patients with damage to a specific part of the brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is a key player in our mind system. Now, these people had totally normal intelligence, but when they did a gambling task, they behaved disastrously. They kept choosing high-risk options, completely ignoring the devastating long-term losses. It was real, causal proof that this one part of the brain is absolutely essential for regulating our risky impulses.
So why does any of this matter? Well, for one, by opening up this black box, neuroeconomics helps us build economic models that are actually grounded in real biology. It can help us settle debates between competing economic theories. It helps explain behaviors that used to just get labeled as irrational biases, showing that maybe they're just a natural result of how our brains are wired. And, at the end of the day, it can help us all understand and maybe even manage ourselves a little bit better.
In short, the whole point of opening the box is to build better theories. Theories about how we actually make choices, not just how some perfectly rational robot should make them. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. If we can literally watch our own decisions forming in real time, if we can finally understand that internal battle between our gut and our mind, could we actually learn to make better ones?